One key element of education that must be addressed is teaching students how to think. In this video, we will focus on two methods to help in this endeavor: concept teaching and inquiry-based teaching. When teaching students how to think, the goal is not simply memorization. It is to help students become self-regulated learners who can think critically and autonomously. You'll recall from prior lessons on Bloom's revised taxonomy that the higher levels of thinking go beyond simple understanding into evaluating and creating. At these levels of knowledge, students are able to recognize bias and misinformation. This is a crucial skill in the modern age of unreliable websites and AI hallucinations. Before discussing how to teach these reasoning skills, it must first be understood that there are two types of reasoning: deductive, in which students take generalizations and pull out specific facts, and inductive, in which students begin with specific facts and follow them to broader conclusions. Concept teaching deals largely with deductive reasoning, while inquiry-based instruction is usually more inductive. Let's begin with concept teaching. Concepts are the building blocks of thinking, and students use them to make sense of the world. One example of this is the concept of a bird. Young children learn that birds may vary in their looks, but the concept always applies to a creature with wings and a beak. Cognitive theorist Jean Piaget posited that new concepts are attained through either assimilation, in which a new concept fits into existing knowledge, or accommodation, in which a person's knowledge must change in light of new information. As students' minds grow and change to add in new learning, they will be able to better understand the three types of concepts. Conjunctive concepts are fixed and do not change. An example of this would be a triangle, which is always defined as a shape with three sides. Disjunctive concepts are more flexible, but generally have a limited set of definitions. An example of this would be a noun, which can refer to a person, a place, or a thing, but never all three at once. Lastly, relational concepts change from person to person. For example, the term aunt may refer strictly to your parent's sibling in some cultures, while in others it can refer to any older woman in your community. Conjunctive concepts are best taught through examples and non-examples, such as Hawaii is an island and Florida is not an island. It may also help to explain critical and non-critical attributes. In the island example, a critical attribute is that islands are surrounded by water. A non-critical attribute is that islands are usually tropical, but there are exceptions like Greenland, which is an island with a cold climate. Concept teaching can be done in two ways: teacher presentation, in which the teacher defines and explains the concept, or concept attainment, in which students discover the concept themselves through analyzing examples and non-examples. One attention-grabbing method of concept attainment is virtual field trips, which allow students to visually explore concepts they may otherwise never see. Regardless of the method used, concept teaching must conclude with a test for understanding. One assessment example that works well for this type of lesson is to ask students, if you were to teach this concept to a younger student, how would you explain it? This helps to reveal their understanding of the basic principles and reveal any misconceptions. Next, let's talk about inquiry-based teaching. In this method, students investigate problems and build their own explanations through curiosity, reasoning, and evidence collection. In addition to teaching students about whatever they're investigating, this method also teaches metacognition and reasoning skills. When launching an inquiry, one way to capture student attention is to begin with something puzzling. For example, why do eggs sink in tap water but float in salt water? This kind of phenomenon is called a discrepant event, and it can spark curiosity and motivate investigation. Inquiry teaching generally follows a 6-step process. First, teachers must gain student attention, possibly through a discrepant event. Second, the problem to be solved is presented. Next, students are asked to form a hypothesis prior to collecting data. After data is collected, it will be analyzed to draw conclusions. Finally, students will reflect on their thinking. This whole process should be guided by the teacher, just enough to maintain productivity, while still giving students the freedom to think for themselves. Cultivating a culture of thinking in your classroom begins way before inquiry lessons, through creating a space where student thinking is frequently discussed, modeled, and visible. The visual element of thinking is especially important to serve as a frequent reminder to students. This can be done through displaying student work around the room with explanation labels, as well as by displaying thinking routines on posters. The culture of thinking is also curated by teacher behavior. Effective inquiry teachers model their thinking, respect student ideas, and provide time for discussion in their classes. Both concept and inquiry-based lessons lend powerful thought processes to direct instruction as they go beyond memorization into how to think and organize knowledge. These methods help students to become thoughtful, independent learners, which are skills that will carry them through their whole lives. Now, let's hear from an educator who helps her students make their thinking visible every day in the classroom. What grades and subjects have you taught?
I started out as a 3K kindergarten teacher at our church.
Wow.
Because I did not get an education degree.
Uh-huh.
So then I went through the alternative PACE
Mm-hmm.
program.
And what certification did that get you?
CTE.
Okay, so then you moved up from, or did you start straight from PACE into teaching middle?
Yes, as soon as I started PACE, because you can't start PACE until you have a job.
Mm-hmm.
So I started here 11 years ago. And so my first 3 years I was teaching under PACE.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've been a related arts teacher the whole time.
Okay.
So I've had the experience of working with all grade levels
Mm-hmm.
for 11 years.
That's awesome. And what classes do you teach?
I teach a yearbook class to 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
I teach entrepreneurship classes to 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Mm-hmm.
I teach Google Basics to 7th grade, Multimedia Basics to 8th grade. So several, last semester I had 5 different preps.
Yeah, that's a lot to plan. My goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in your classes, a lot of those involve a lot of critical thinking, which our kids are not great at.
Mm-hmm.
How do you instill that in them or help guide them?
Especially in my entrepreneurship classes, which I did this in computer tech too. But I give them things like, your parents say you can have a Halloween party for 10 of your best friends. So make a grocery list. Look at they have to go on, find prices of how much things would be. I give them a budget. I say you cannot go over $100. So they're doing that, going through that whole process. Then we put formulas in a Google sheet where we'll just calculate totals and quantities and prices, and then get totals. So we do that, and then they have to go back. And if they go over that amount, they have to go back and figure out, what could I take off of this list or what could I substitute in here? For example, instead of having Kool-Aid, having water. So they have to think through that whole process of how can I stay in that price range. In entrepreneurship, we also do prototypes. We do that in computer tech too, but in my 8th grade entrepreneurship, they have to come up with a whole business idea, and then they have to come up with their prototype. What would their prototype look like? Which a lot of times that's hard for them to think through because they're not always coming up with a product. Theirs may be service based. So then they have to figure out, how do I do a prototype for a service, which is then where we talk through, maybe you need to have an app. Maybe you create an app that you can use, and show me what it would look like. That would be their prototype.
So what do you do if they come to you and they're like, I don't know, I have no ideas?
Then
I get that from them a lot.
Yeah. And a lot of times, honestly, their ideas, I don't immediately come up with something. I'm like, okay, let's think through it.
What does that look like?
Tell me, what would this actually look like? Would you have a website where they would go to the website and they would sign up for your service? Or, we just talk through it until we can get to the point where they're like, oh, okay. I said, you've got to create something where they know how to get your product or your service. So how are you going to do that? So and I get them to do write reflections too, because we do a game it's called Don't Bust Your Budget. So they work in teams and they have beans that they spend, but it's on real life things like, are you going to are you going to have insurance? Are you going to rent your own apartment or live at home? Those kind of things. So they work as a group to figure out how they're going to spend their beans.
It's kind of a personal finance class too.
Yes. Yeah. And then they have to write a reflection and say, tell me what they learned. And a lot of them, they come up with really good responses like, I learned that maybe I don't need to get my nails done every week. Like things
Yeah.
like that. Like, so that I know that they're getting it. Like they're understanding that this is going to cost money, so I've got to shave off something else, which is what I want them, to
Yeah.
just think through.
The writing really helps make that visible.
Yes.
Awesome. Well,
Yep.
I think that's it. Thank you so much.
All right. You're welcome.